Every time I close my eyes, I see in front of me.
Let's embark on a journey of knowledge and discovery. Let's learn from the extraordinary lives of the greatest in the art of living. The art of living.
Join the conversation with Dr. Wael Harasi and Dr. Lamia Al-Hajj.
Every day.
From Sunday to Thursday.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Dear listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I salute you with the salutation of peace. And welcome to a brand new show today. What do you call the program? I forgot.
Sustainability.
That's not the name of the show.
The art of living.
The art of living. So welcome to the art of living, everyone. Yeah, and today's topic is sustainability, again with the wonderful Dr. Mahdi. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Mahdi.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor.
For the second time around, I hope that our dear listeners will bear with us.
It's the public's request, Dr. Mahdi.
Yes.
I got a storm of messages after yesterday's session.
Yesterday's session was indeed a hit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was indeed a very useful and it was dear to a lot of people's hearts. And the issue of sustainability is one that has, a lot of people might think, what are we on about? Why is it in the art of living? What does it have to do on the way we live? We've never heard of it. We only hear politicians talk about sustainability. And some might say sustainability is alien to us. What are you talking about? However, if you think, before we go into the concept of sustainability, it is very important that we highlight that the concept of sustainability is not new. Mm-hmm. It has been around for a long time, especially in the Islamic teachings. Being responsible within your family, your environment and society is actually part of sustainability. Dr. Lamia, do you have any evidence from the scripts of sustainability in the Quran or Sunnah?
Absolutely. I mean, the idea that sustainability is a modern issue that only struck a couple of decades ago is absolutely false. Mm-hmm. And that it concerns a specific group of people is also another false statement or concept. Sustainability is exactly the way of living. We need to live a sustainable life. And this comes deeply rooted in our actual Islamic teaching. And this might come to a surprise to some people. For example, Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ was a pioneer of environmentalism. And a lot of people might say, how is that? There's a lot of hadith, many of hadith that speak about how we should sustain the environment, our role as individuals towards the environment. And here I have two hadiths amongst many, of course. The earth, so this is the hadith from Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The earth is green and beautiful, and Allah has appointed you His stewards over it. So this is actually saying that this also comes from the Quranic teaching as well, that human beings have been given the responsibility over the natural environment. Another hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, if a Muslim plants a tree or sows seeds, and then a bird or a person or an animal eats from it, it is regarded as a charitable gift, so a sadaqah from him. And this is by Imam Bukhari. So it's not only that that's given as a sunnah, and people say, this is only a sunnah, so you can do it or you can leave it. But it's actually deeply rooted in the Quran as well. So there are lots of verses in the Quran that point to our responsibility towards the environment. And here I don't want to take too much time, but I want to mention two ayahs before we go into our distinguished guest, of course, who will elaborate more. But we've got two verses out of many that I'm going to mention. One is in Surah Al-A'raf, eat and drink, but waste not by excess, for Allah loved not the wasters. Another one is from Surah Al-A'raf as well, Ayah 31. Children of Adam, dress well whenever you are at worship, and eat and drink as we have permitted, but do not be extravagant. God does not like extravagant people. So there are lots of, this actually points out that the concept of sustainability is a religious duty. It's not actually an optional matter. So that's why I think today's session is very, very important, to send that message to the audience that we're not just sitting here talking about sustainability for the sake of, passing on time, but we need to actually understand the concept so we're able to apply it in our daily lives. And this would be actually part of worship.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lamia, for that. And dear listeners, I would like to remind you that you could call us today on the Art of Living on 24602058. That's 24602058. Join us. Today's topic is on sustainability. Dr. Mahdi, as we've heard the verses that Dr. Lamia have recited, as well as the hadith, if we talk about the concept of sustainability, do you think that another hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which says little that is sustainable is better than too much or too many, but
Perishable.
Perishable. So does that really summarizes what sustainability is about? Can you please tell us more about this?
Thank you for opening up this topic in the kind of public debate to our audience, and especially in Ramadan, because it makes that much great sense. Because in Ramadan, as we all know, the people speak of food.
Yeah.
Yes, banquets.
And banquets and plenty of food, and it is not without surprise that you will find more than 45% of the composition of any of our landfills throughout the Arab countries is foodstuff, and it is sad and ironic at the same time when you realize that there are 1,200,000,000 individuals on planet Earth. They sustain living on $1 per day for all their requirements. And if you can imagine that this is happening while, we are our appetites open up in Ramadan for this kind of extravagance. And the point that is important at this stage, when you say sustainable development and using the Western term or the English term, and for people, they are still struggling to kind of find the exact Arabic equivalent for sustainable.
مستدامة.
تنمية مستدامة.
Some would say mustadima, as if it's mustadima. Some would say da'ima. And so people invented this term, mustadama, which of course it derives from the word da'ima, أو دائم, أو يديم. And the idea of istidama or sustainability in everything you consume and everything you do is that it will stay with you. It is not a one-time practice and then it goes away. So it's like Hadith al-Sharif now. Even if you are on a running river and you go for wudu, that do not abuse. And if we use the term, the Arabic term, istidama, for example, you would find, of course, that our forefathers, they used to use the palm tree in a sustainable manner. Its stones are crushed to be part of a coffee, for example. They use the trunk for a reason, and they use the branches for a reason. So nothing goes wasted. So they use it in every possible way, and it's exactly istidama, sustainability. But now in the contemporary term, people use the term sustainable development, which stems from the initial concern for the environment. People were first they thought that how do we survive? How do we thrive if the environment stands short of providing us with our needs? Now, if we, for example, if the air we breathe is polluted, for example, then you will end up sick. When you end up sick, you will end up in hospitals. When you end up in hospitals, you will use resources. So if we ensure that our air that we breathe is not polluted because of what we do, industrials, if they act sustainably and responsibly, they will take care of the methods they use in the industrial process.
So there's a role of two people come in the picture here. There's the individual and there's the business or the industry. So everybody needs to take part in playing a role in maintaining a sustainable environment.
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure if this is pertinent. So the world in general, they first started speaking of our collective responsibility for environment. So what did they do? Even when the UN agencies were created, they did not create an agency that was specialized in the environment. So what they ended up doing, they met in Stockholm in 1972, and they thought, what is it that we can do in order to safeguard and preserve our environment? So they spoke of environment at large. They were not pretty sure what is it they need to do in order to do that. So between 72 and 92, when the first Rio conference was held in Rio, they started figuring out that environment really does not thrive without this intricate kind of relationship with the development. So they started speaking of development, and they started speaking with little shyness on what sustainability means.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that was because it meant that they've started realizing that they need to be more responsible, and that throughout their history of development they were not responsible? Because sustainability is all about responsibility. As you mentioned earlier, the three main pillars of sustainability is economy, environment, and social. And previously, any industry would their main aim would be the economy only, regardless of the social impact or the environmental impact. So, do you think that was the main driver of their shyness and
Yeah, I think that as we always know, that you have your own mandate. So if you are a businessman and you are into industry, so what you would think of is profitability.
Yes.
So whatever that maximize your profit, you will follow through. And then, of course, not to mention that, industrialists, they are responsible people. They would like to continue investing. Now, if you invest and you lose your elements of investment, if you are polluting the air, if you are consuming the natural resources beyond replenishment, then you will arrive at a certain point in the future whereby you cannot continue investing.
Yeah.
So this is why there is something that needs to be said at this stage. It is not a kind of an inkling that came around between environmentalists. There was an institution that brought all the scientists. They called it the Club of Rome. And in the Club of Rome, they asked the scientists to look into the different features that provides the planet Earth with elements of survival. Mm-hmm. So they looked into the natural resources, they looked into water, they looked into the potentials for providing food for the growing number of the population. As we said yesterday, the population on planet Earth is 7 billion now.
Yeah. 9 billion in 2050.
And it will be 9 billion in 2050, and it is claimed that it will be 50 billion at the end of the century. So therefore, these scientists, they were looking into the impact of the manner that resources were exploited at that time. And they looked, of course, in parallel with the growth of the population rate. And they found out that with this pattern of consumption, then we will arrive at a stage whereby you will find no more food for the newcomers, the new mouths that we bring into the planet Earth. And this is why they thought that they will need to consider how best to rationalize our use of those resources to maintain the sufficient balance. Gandhi said that the problem with planet Earth is not of the natural resources that are available. The problem with us is the greed.
Human behavior.
Human greed that everyone would like everything and every.
The bigger the better.
The bigger the better. That is correct.
Yeah.
And therefore, in 1992, they started speaking of sustainable development, and they were speaking of those 3 pillars. And if we recall His Majesty's televised address to the Rio, 1990, he addressed the audience. There were some 100 world leaders, and there were some 30,000 individuals who turned up in the Rio in order to kind of drum to the ears of those policymakers and monarchs and premiers and heads of states that unless they do something about the plight of the resources and the plight of environment on planet Earth, then we need to forget, because scientists and NASA and other agencies, they could not until now, although they spent trillions of US dollars, they could not find another planet in the galaxy that supports living. That supports living.
Yeah. It's really amazing listening to the history of all of this. But for the listeners at home, if we would like to summarize what we have just said about the concept, sustainability and sustainable development is basically living responsibly and taking care of economy, environment, and the social aspect of life as well. Although all of this has been mainly targeting organizations, companies, and governments, how can we bring home the ideas and the ideals and the values of sustainability in our individual's life? But before we go that, I would like to ask Dr. Lamia, what do you think the individual's role would be? If this has been addressed to, heads of states, do we really have an impact as individuals or as families, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, they say charity begins at home. This is one form of charity that starts at home. And first of all, it's about the mindset. Mm-hmm. We need to understand that we are responsible towards our environment, because our environment is our bigger home. If you think of it, we give and take. We need to think of ourselves as part of a bigger society and not just an individual in our little house. And I try to teach my children the concept of sustainability in simple terms, of course. So I taught them the triple R rule, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So first of all, we need to start by reducing the amount of material that is not recyclable to reduce the usage. If we have to use it, then we would try to reuse it. So we use the same bottle a couple of times for different applications. And then at the end, we won't throw that bottle. We will recycle it. So starting at that age, I think they grow up with the idea that I am actually a responsible person. And this is also trying to teach our children responsibility, that they are responsible. That's, of course, in terms of children. But as any individual at home, and I think this holds true for any person in anywhere. So you have your role at home. You have a role at the office as well, if you go to work.
Yeah.
For example, at home, we can, as I said, a few examples now. In the office, a simple task of switching off our lights and air conditions and switching off the monitor every time we leave the office. I don't understand when I leave the department, or for example, or any office where the lights are switched on and you have multiple lights switched on in the corridors and there's nobody utilizing it, and they say, oh, well, that's all covered. But it's scary because it's telling you about how people think. There was a report at one point. There was simple statistics in the UK where I was doing my PhD, and they had a poster in our labs, and they said, please make sure you switch off your computers, because if everybody switches off their computer every day, that will reduce the emissions of greenhouse gas emissions that is enough to power a double-deck bus for a whole year. So that's an example of the power of an individual in sustaining the environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I would like to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Art of Living, and today's topic is sustainability. You can call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. Dr. Mahdi, how can we really bring this at home? You mentioned Ramadan. And just to start with, just 2 days ago, my father came back home and he said, I was in the fish market and there wasn't a single fish.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I said, well, yes, because everybody bought all the fish, and just after Ramadan, you will find that 60% of that fish is actually in the landfill, thrown away. Yeah. So how can we, understand the need for sustainability at home, and how can we implement the rules of sustainability at home?
Well, you need to focus first on the whole picture,
mm-hmm.
and the whole picture really is driven by government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak of sustainable development, the first thing that comes in mind is economic development. So people would speak of criteria whereby you would measure your economic development. People will say, you have a growth of 5% or 10% or 12%. This is per capita income.
Yeah.
And therefore, this is the economic model that has been advocated for, centuries by the World Bank and those institutions. Now, the point is that the sustainable development is not exactly this. There is a kingdom, I think, somewhere in the Himalayas, Bhutan.
Mm-hmm.
They have a different a yardstick to measure economic development. They call it happiness development.
Okay.
So they would measure the progress by the way their citizenry expresses their content and their satisfaction over what is done by the government in the country. So Bhutan is a small country on the Himalayas, and they bank all their resources on tourism. But they do not open their doors wide open to those who would like to come and pour into their country without realizing the impact that these tourists will have on the people.
The social aspect.
The social aspect as well as other aspects, because they have their calculation of their carrying capacity. So they would have, say, for example, the figure that I'm quoting, it was 5 years back. They thought that they will have only 120,000 tourists. Now, if they arrive at that figure, they will not accept any more tourists added. And this is one way of judging economic development or development using a different criteria. And in our countries now, they are speaking of different criteria, like a basket of criteria, whereby, yes, you would measure economic development using the per capita income, which is very dodgy, because when we say that the economic development arrived at a 10%, it is not the case with every individual.
True.
By the same manner, if you would say the average income of the individuals of, say, Oman or any other country has reached, as you know now, in the Gulf countries, Qatar is the first, second is the Emirates, and so on and so forth. It does not express or tell us that it is true that every individual of that country enjoys that income.
True.
It is a figure. And I know our problem with statistics. We can lie with statistics, and we give the impression that it's deceiving.
Especially when you have a big gap between the super rich and the poor.
The average would come
you have a
somewhere
very
acceptable.
nice, neat average, and you paint a very rosy picture.
Very, very true. As coming back to your question, how can we relate sustainable development to the individual, to our houses, and so on? Dr. Lemmy has just mentioned a few examples of what the kids can do and what the adults can do. It's again the same story. It is something that you can feed your kids together with the milk as they come in order to act responsibly. You are not supposed. You come close to the fridge and you open up the fridge door, and then you would consider what is it that you need from the fridge. So by the time you decide what will you need from the fridge, all the cool air has left the fridge, and by the time you close the door, it will need double the time in order to cool up again.
I was trying to convince convinced Talal with this concept that he wouldn't get it yet, so I think he's too young for it. I was explaining the energy, the coolness is coming out, and he just wouldn't realize.
I think you've
just close the door and decide what you want first.
I think you're asking too much of him. He's still very young.
Yeah, it's the same thing with us going to supermarkets. How many times you went to the supermarket because you wanted to buy one single or two items, and you end up with a trolley that is filled with
That's
stuff.
true.
I know. At times we say in Arabic, "Ruh khadra." Our spirits are kind of lenient, and it is susceptible to the pressure of advertising, marketing, and so on. So they would tell you, buy two and get the third free. So what you actually did, you bought three of the same stuff that you only needed one, for example.
Yes.
Or you may not need it at all.
True.
But it's this kind of, education that has been inculcated.
If we look at the bigger picture, Doctor, of this particular action, I've bought 3 bottles instead of 1. And that meant that I'm telling the company that is producing that, this is the actual demand. Bring in more. And for the company or the factory to do more, they will need a lot of other resources, burning fuel, man hours, transportation, and a lot is being done just because you have bought 3 bottles instead of 1.
Do you think a way to avoid that is to making shopping lists so that you know exactly what you want? But I do shopping lists, but I tend to still grab a few more items that I not really on my list.
Shopping list is a good way of doing it. One other trick is, don't go shopping when you're hungry.
Oh, yes.
Otherwise, you'll just end up buying everything that's there. Everything catchy, the colors, the taste, the smell. You'll just go and buy everything.
So let's not shop in Ramadan.
Let's not shop in Ramadan.
Only after
Iftar. Or maybe very early in the morning, Friday morning or Saturday morning.
Now, the concept of acting responsibly is a real one. It's not something that you would like to, kind of emulate. You are speaking of your income. So you would use your income prudently.
It's true.
Because if you spend so much money on your foodstuff, there is little money left for you to maneuver. It's about using your mobile, for example, as long as it is in good shape.
Absolutely.
You don't have to change your mobile every 6 months. And similarly, a new graduate or leaver of institution of learning, he hasn't yet got his first salary. You will find him shopping for a car.
Yeah,
true.
And so he's mortgaging his resources as long as he can take it, paying his debts for the vehicle that he produced. there is something for the planners to do in urban planning, for example. You look at Muscat, for example, there are no public transportation.
Yes, thank you for touching that.
For example.
Yeah.
Now, if you leave your car without burning fossil fuels at a parking lot, which is the case in all over the place, and use a decent public transportation, be it a train, which is forthcoming, and I don't know when is it coming. Is it in our lifetime or? But
and it's not even for the you know it's not even for commute.
It's not
for the urban.
Yes, it's not for
right.
urban. Yeah.
That is right. And I heard that there are plans to study the needs, and I wonder how many studies do we need in order to come across the reality that we need public transport.
Why don't we learn from the countries that are already applying it for decades now?
We are not even learning from our own mistakes. I mean, you've just touched a nerve there when you mentioned urban planning, because I'm too much into this. If you look at the new area in Ghala, for example, and how it's been designed, that place was supposed to be designed to solve the issue in Rui, an old Rui. That was designed in the early 70s, and you could see that there is no space for car parks or for proper logistics movement. And they've designed Ghala exactly the same way. There is no dual carriageways. There are no requirements for car parks. 9-story buildings, no car parks, because as if you just fold your car, put it in your pocket and take it into your flat. But more towards thinking of environment and the way we plan our cities. We have designs that are approved by the municipality since the 1970s, and that never changed. We used to build our houses in a very environmentally friendly way, in a very sustainable manner, using mud and clay in the old days. The engineering design of the way we orientate the house, the way we design the windows, they're narrow from the outside and much wider from the inside. So it allows light, but not heat, minimum heat. We don't have that. If you look at any of the regulations now, it's all about the color needs to be white, the gate need to be that orientation. And we spend a lot of time and effort not focusing on how could we design a house, a family home, and be, energy conscious. We spent a lot of money building expensive houses using cement and stone bricks, which those bricks, they just absorb heat like anything. And then we spend a lot of more money for air conditioning and burn natural gas, which in Oman we are short of. If the government thought of, and even individuals, nothing today is stopping any individuals using environmentally friendly means of building a house, and save on energy. You could invest a little bit more on capital investment in building the house, but you're saving a generation.
If I can add to that point, Wael, that's a very interesting point, because I was discussing actually this with my husband yesterday, because my husband's so much into having green way of living, and he always used to mention he buys these old architectural books, and he used to read these live examples of how people build what we call green homes, or they environmentally sustainable structures in their building. So, for example, they would use coats to paint their houses that will reduce the heat in cold countries, of course, from the heat escaping the homes from the heaters. In our case, we can do it such that the cold air doesn't escape. For example, the grey water. We produce a lot of grey water in our homes. Why don't we have a system where we can collect this grey water from washing and and laundry, and have a separate tank and add a small filter to filter that water and use it for irrigation? Solar energy. It kills me that we have so much sunlight that is wasted. People who don't have sunlight are working on solar projects, and we don't have any solar projects in Oman. If we have a little solar panel on each roof, it can even look like a prettier building anyway to start with. Capture the light and use it as natural, that can heat our water. It can actually power the electricity for our houses. So simple things like this that can be done in each individual house that can make a big impact eventually. Absolutely.
You mentioned a lot of important items. I would like to comment into when you mentioned grey water. We produce a lot of grey water that could be filtered, yes. You don't have to buy a filter. You can make it yourself.
Even better.
You can make a filter very easy by,
rudimentary, yes.
Just normal sewage, the septic tank, fill it with gravel, 2 types of gravel. That will filter. At the end, you have a small, chamber where you collect all the filtered water that is good for irrigation.
What stops us from doing this? Is it there's no market to supply us with the material?
No. It's just the same building material you build.
Well, we have a business opportunity here.
You said it at the very...
The mindset.
The mindset.
The mindset.
Yes,
The point is that we feel comfortable with the way we used to do things. This goes with the teachers who use the lecturing all the time instead of the interactive approach in their pedagogical skills. It goes with the planners. They are used in a way to plan, and they are not ready to kind of in their safe box. They don't want to risk going out of their
comfort zone
of their comfort zone. And the point that the grey water, for example, Oman is known to be the poorest, among the poorest nations in the region in terms of fresh water. And we are dependent on the desalination unit to provide us. And we all know what is happening now down there in many communities who are resorting to tankers in order to supplement the shortages of water. And because that machine went berserk, and that machine did not work, and there was a rerouting of a pipeline, and so on and so forth. Up until now, we are almost approaching mid-Ramadan, and we are dependent on tankers.
So it hasn't been resolved yet.
It hasn't resolved yet.
There is a very simple, solution, not only for grey water, Doctor, but distilled water, fresh distilled water. How many air conditioning in Muscat are there in a house? If you put, just overnight, you can get up to 30 liters or more from a single air conditioning of pure distilled water. From a single air conditioning. If you have that bucket under the air conditioning, drain pipe, you would be able to collect a lot of water, maybe over 100 or 150 liters of distilled water every single day.
That is true.
Yeah, and it's a missed opportunity.
It is.
Yeah, you could connect it all to recover it later. In mosques where we have not grey water, I would say very light grey water, wudu. And a lot of money is wasted there, and a lot of water is wasted there. Why can't we use it for irrigation? The more plants we have, the more trees. I think even the temperature would drop. Yeah, because the temperature that we have comes from the reflection from Earth.
Yeah. The problem is, I guess, you must remember, Dr. Lamia, of the strategic research pieces that were conducted at the university. And one of the pieces of research that I remember is the grey water thing.
Yeah.
And they were looking into how best to handle the grey water and how cheap we can in terms of methodology that we use in order to further purify it.
Yes.
And once that research has finished with its recommendation, it is shelved somewhere.
Unfortunately, like so many projects.
And the problem I think is basically we do not link. This nexus is missing. The nexus between the pieces of research which we produce and the policy setting that we, the policymaker goes about setting on his policy adventure without resorting to any evidence from science or recommendations that are produced by pieces of research.
So there's a miscommunication between the scientists and the policymakers, the decision makers. Because I even attended conferences of this nature in the UK, and they show that even in the House of Parliament they need to have scientists from universities to be MPs. because there's a very strong link between the scientists and the decision makers. They come hand in hand. They do the research and then they lift their findings to the decision makers that will then create decisions based on the research. Do you think that is missing in our community?
Yes, of course. By the way, in order not to feel that this is something that is restricted to Oman, this is worldwide.
Yes.
Okay.
People, policymakers and scientists, they don't speak to each other, and it's because it is what it is. Scientists, they have their own methodological kind of approach and so on, and policymakers, mostly they are politicians
with agenda.
Yes. And the problem is that you approach the policymakers and you would ask them, why did you do, for heaven's sake, why did you do this blunder? And they would tell you, well, it's because of the public demand. The public has caused us to kind of go astray.
So basically us.
They blame us.
I guess it's a pointing finger game.
Yeah, and I think that I would mention something that is here to believe. And for example, see what's happening to the Jabal Dhafar, for example. Jabal Dhafar, we were aware of the threats and the challenges it's facing since the 70s. And since the 70s, there were symposia and conferences that were held in order to guard against what is forthcoming. And because the Jabal Dhafar now, you look at it, it resembles in no manner Jabal Dhafar that we used to see 10 years ago.
Shame.
And we have been there to organize events for indigenous tree plantation and so on. And we speak to the folks my age and even younger than me. And they would say that a big flock of a herd of camels and cows, once they enter Sahel, which is called in Dhafar the
valley,
the Jarbib, they cannot see them because of the density of the branches and the height of the trees.
Wow!
Now a single goat can be seen,
from a distance,
can be observed from a distance. And you look at the Jebel now; it's all fenced. And people have given lands in order to, and they build houses, and the houses using blocks like Jebel Akhdar instead of using the natural, environmentally friendly elements that we have.
Yeah.
They use blocks and they use colors that are terrible.
I know. It's.
I'll just ask you to pause for 1 second. I would like to remind our listeners that our lines are open, and we look forward to hearing from you. It's a very interesting discussion, and we would love your input. Our number is 24602058. That is 24602058. Let
me give another example of exactly what's happening there. It's less of an impact, but nevertheless, it is, it's continuing. It's not from the 70s. It's still continuing until today. I live in part of Sib. Now, Sib is well known, even the name, the meaning of the name. There are several meanings. It came from a Persian, the apple, or even al-basatin, gardens. Yeah. And until today, if you look at the satellite images of Sib, it's probably the only green area in the whole of Muscat Governorate. Yeah, that is really dense greenery. And the reason is you have all the wadis of Dakhiliya are coming towards Al-Khawd and fill, the underground reservoirs with fresh water. And you have the soil that is so fertile. And I lived there since the early 1980s. And that place was green. There is no fruit that you can think of that is not planted there. Today, owners of those farms have, gone away from farming, and they started dividing these farms into little plots, up to 50 plots each, to be a residential area. And you kill that potential forever. you change the geography of the area forever, and that potential is totally lost. I have half an acre there, and every winter I try and plant whatever I can. I brought seeds from Switzerland of all types of tomatoes and lettuces and fruit. I have passion fruits. I have apples from Thailand. I have oranges. We have grapefruits. I even planted vanilla, and it's thriving. Yeah, in that half an acre of plot. And you see others are using those plots with the blessings of the government to chop the land for little homes.
Residential.
You could have used areas where the salinity of the water is very high. The soil is not suitable, non-fertile. But to do that on a land like this is really a crime, because I could, from our well, I could drink the water. I could really drink the water.
Yeah, it's public demand. They would tell you that it's what the public are demanding, and I think that this is what we say in Arabic, عذر أقبح من ذنب.
Yeah.
Now, if one is given the responsibility of preserving the sanctity, because when we speak of resources, natural resources, soil is a natural resource.
Yeah.
Together with water. And some of these sources or resources are finite, like oil.
Yes.
And people are speaking that maybe our own strategic reservoir of hydrocarbon resources will last for 30 years or so. Let's assume it will last twice as the figure that was given to us, 60 years. Then what will happen to the future generations?
Absolutely.
This brings me back to the definition of sustainable development. It's meeting the demands of the current generation without jeopardizing the needs of future generation to live the same life that we lived. Now the point is, can we assume that if at all we have exhausted our reserves of hydrocarbon resources, what will happen to the new generation?
Absolutely.
What will happen?
It's really sad. We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Fine. Thank you very much.
Yes. How are you? I just wanted to add just a little thing to this program.
Okay.
Which is the big bull over there in Ivory. Actually, I'm from Ivory.
Okay.
And we call it Kharbo Musarrat. And, maybe most of the people here in Oman, they don't know how much water over there. Actually, I promise we can give this water to the whole country for more than 10 years and it will still there. How much big is it?
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to add this thing for this program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
maybe Dr. Mehdi can shed some light on that, on the large reservoir of fresh water in Ivory.
This is.
Thank you very much for your call. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Yeah.
Shukran.
Yeah, as much as we appreciate the concerns of the citizen about the presence or the existence of resources that were not yet extrapolated, and I think the issue of underground reservoir is one issue that you need when you address the needs of the future generations. Do we all recall that His Majesty, I think in one of his interviews he said that he predicts the next war in the Middle East will be over water.
Water, yes.
And so those kind of prophetic understanding of our difficulties with regard to our manner of using the natural resource. Now we know there was a reservoir in in Abri, which was already Hawd al-Sharqiyya, they call it. And they have already dug Hawd al-Sharqiyya of water, and they use it first to clean the cars and garages before even using it for individual consumption. Now, underground reservoirs are water that has been there for maybe thousands of years. Because of the precipitation, because of water that penetrates through the crust of the stones and the different layers of earth in order to stay there.
Yeah.
And you only use it when it is absolutely necessary. Now this reminds me with a model that we need to look into. Norway, for example. Norway is known to be a very small Scandinavian country with a population of 5 million. And in Norway, you may know that maybe half of the year they have days, and another half they have
night.
They have night, and very little natural resources except for timber. Now this is the only country of Scandinavia they managed to extract oil from the North Sea. Now they market their oil, they sell it, and they never touch a single krona out of the oil they sell. They keep it in a fund for the future generation.
That's smart thinking.
Now this is an example that you need to look into. Everybody knows about that. This is not a riddle, and I would imagine that if we look and we deal with all our resources, you look at the common form of investment in this country, beloved country of ours. What is it? Quarries.
Yeah.
Quarries. They go and extract limestones, and sometimes, and most of the times, it is exported.
Yeah.
And
we'll come back to that, Dr. Mahdi. Thank you very much. We'll just, dear listeners, we'll break for a minute for the call of prayers. So please stay tuned and remember to call us after the show, after the break, 24602058. That's 24602058. See you after the break. Dear listeners, welcome back to The Art of Living, and today's topic is sustainability. It's been a very interesting discussion with Dr. Mahdi, a very rich one as well. And we would like to remind you that in the remaining 5 minutes, you could call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. Dr. Lamia, you mentioned solar power and green energy.
Yes.
But I recall that I was in one of these strategic conferences in Oman, and Minister of Oil and Gas, who was present in the conference, raised a very important topic. He said, it's all well and good that you talk about replacing hydrocarbons with solar and wind and all of this. However, there is one thing that you haven't touched on, which is your attitude. Why do you need these 3 chandeliers when you can do one?
Yes.
Yeah? You are abusing hydrocarbons. You are abusing energy that is from hydrocarbons. You would do exactly the same with energy that comes from solar. It is the attitude and our hunger and thirst to abuse whatever we have. So even if we use solar energy for power generation, it doesn't mean that we have solved our problems, unless we start and change our attitude. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Not even God Himself will change anything in your life until you actually take the first step and start the change from within. So it is this change from within that we really request from our listeners to start towards thinking of sustainability in terms of any resources we talk about. When it comes to food, how much we eat, how much we buy, how much we consume. How many times do we change our gadgets? Do not give up on your gadgets until they give up on you. Yeah, wait for them to give up on you, and then change them.
While even wudu, each of us makes wudu at least a minimum 5 times a day. And if in the amount of water that we used when we perform ablution, al-wudu, especially in like mosques or in commercial centers where you just press the button, the water just flows, that we need to keep in mind that we are going to be held accountable and we're going to be questioned on the day of judgment of each drop of water. They say that you shouldn't collect your blessings in a bag that's got holes in it. Yes. You're doing something good by performing ablution for prayers, but you're losing your blessings and points by wasting. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala la yuhibbul musrifin. This is one of the worst characters of a human being. So if we actually deeply understand that this is our obligation as Muslims and we are actually going to be questioned about this should be the biggest driving force for us to be sustainable in our daily lives.
Very true.
Also, another advice I think we need to give our listeners is a lot of people build their own houses. Before you think of the color scheme inside or that I want an open plan kitchen or a traditional one, I want an American design, think of how can you make it a good and healthy place to live in before. How can I make it sustainable? How can I make it energy efficient? Think of the orientation. Think of where you put your windows, your largest windows. You need to know that facing south is the worst thing you can do. But if you have a house that is a piece of land that is facing south, where most of the sunlight comes directly onto your house, when you design your house, make the windows as small as possible. Use double glazed windows. Mm-hmm. Don't go for the cheap stuff because you'll end up paying huge bills afterwards for energy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it doesn't come from your pocket because remember, about 60% of the price is actually subsidized by the government. Mm-hmm. So you're paying for the bills, the government is paying for the bills, and the future generation is paying for the cold air in your bedroom. Yeah, mm-hmm. Because we're using gas and oil. That is, we're supposed to, preserve for the future. One of the funny things, and sad at the same time, is that you see that an air conditioning is set at 16 degrees. And people are hiding beneath very, thick blankets after. Why do you need to do that? Yeah, if it is too cold, just raise the temperature 22. And you can do without the blanket. Yeah, so it's attitude. Dr. Mahdi, what are your advice to our listeners? We have a minute to go. What's your advice, final advice for our listeners?
Yeah, I understand, of course, that when we speak sustainably, or when we speak of sustainability, this is as much as it is an individual responsibility, it is as well a government responsibility. And I'm sure that the people will be able to impress and to have an impact on planners and policymakers by what they demand. And the problem is at times, what you claim that you preach, you do not practice.
Yeah.
Now, if which is something that is detested by the religion.
Yes. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لما تقولون ما لا تفعلون. Why do you say what you don't practice?
And this is exactly true. And I think that the points that you all made at this point, how would an individual, a parent, a house builder, a layman will come about and do his bit of sustainable behavior and sustainable practice in the manner they consume things and the way they buy and they listen to marketing exercise. And nowadays, of course, you can go to court if someone does marketing which does not tell you the whole truth.
Yeah.
Now, I am sure that we will arrive at a stage whereby if irresponsible marketing as well that ends up in people acting against al-fitra, against the common sense, against nature, they will be taken to court as well. But until then, we are our own judgment. We have plenty of resources within ourselves, within the books, within in order to follow as a guideline.
So educate yourself and start practicing as soon as possible.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahdi. Dr. Lamia, any final words?
No, I just had a very quick comment that we need to teach. I think it's very important, and I'm going to repeat this again because I think it's very important that we teach our children at a very young age the concept of sustainability, because that means we're going to train the children to become youth who are going to be more responsible, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahdi, for being with us and enriching the whole experience and the show. We thank you for your valuable time spending here with us and teaching us. So, dear listeners, from me, Wa'il Al-Harrasi
and Lamia Al-Hajj.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.